Thank you for another awesome video. I was wondering, in your first match you had PTA runes, when would be a good use of PTA over Conqueror perhaps? When would I go press the attack on Aphelios? You have a poor of the content, and notice you change your runes, items, or spells in any other game. Can you please do a short video explaining when to take each runes or items, please? Hello, Vapora. What do you think is better for Aphelios, PTA or Fleet? Okay, so something is telling me that you guys maybe want to know when to run PTA over Fleet on Aphelios. Just a small hunch. So I'm gonna do a short video here explaining that. You should be seeing Fleet as your default keystone. It's not necessarily the one with the most synergy for Aphelios. I guess PTA technically has more synergy because some of his abilities just proc it very easily. But it doesn't necessarily live up to your win condition for most games, which is, obviously, like in team fights, you're a pretty immobile ADC. You appreciate any, help in safety that you can get. So the sustain from Fleet is really nice, the move speed from Fleet is really nice. It's not necessarily the best option for winning lane always, but it's probably just a better scaling option. And in the level 1 at least, it's going to be by far your best choice since it's kind of hard to proc PTA level 1. But you can go pretty aggressive level 1 with your green range. So when do you run press the attack then? I run press the attack mainly when I have an engaged support who just pulls the enemies towards you. So, for example, that would be Thresh, Blitzcrank, Pike, and Maokai. Those are the main ones. There's also Nautilus, you might think, who slightly pulls enemies towards you. The thing is, his hook more pulls himself towards the enemy than the enemies towards you. And why do I make this distinction where it has to pull the enemies towards you? Aphelios doesn't have great ability to follow up most of the time. If you get, for example, a Leona support ulting a Jinx that is a mile away from you, if you have purple ult, great, you can follow it up with purple ult and root them and walk all over, and you're going to be able to follow it up just fine. But most of your weapons don't really have great follow-up. If you have green Q, you can at least land a green Q, sort of like a Jinx would be able to follow up a Leona ult with her W. But it's very situational and it's still not amazing follow-up anyway. If I was playing Lucian, for example, when Leona stuns someone from a mile away, I can dash forwards to follow up that engage. But if I'm playing Aphelios, I just gonna have to slowly walk over to them. So when you have an engaged support, you would much rather have one that pulls the enemies towards you, like Thresh, Blitzcrank, Pike, or Maokai. Maokai obviously doesn't, he has a root with his W, but then he positions behind them and he pushes them towards you. So that's less effective than the other ones, which is why I would suspect that in terms of how each support performs with Aphelios is why he's like at the bottom of the pulley supporties. But it's still fairly decent compared to other engaged supports. So when I'm paired with any one of these supports, Thresh, Blitzcrank, Pike, or Maokai, that is the main scenario where I would look to run PTA. Because that is going to be an engaged lane where I actually have great ability to follow up, and the win condition is going to be bursting down whoever we pull. And that's when I would say that PTA actually lends itself better to your win condition than Fleet. You can also take it more than just that. You could run it with any engaged support, right? Like if, for example, the Leona example that we covered earlier, not my favorite engaged support with Aphelios, as I mentioned, because you would just much rather have an engage that you can follow up more easily. But when you do have an engaged support like Leona, maybe your ability to follow it up isn't great, but it is still your win condition to burst down whoever Leona is engaging onto. So it is viable in a situation. I've just decided that Fleet is probably just as good though, just because it's such a nice rune with Aphelios. It's really only these four that I would say that PTA is completely mandatory with, or it's just like significantly better than Fleet. And what else? Oh yeah, so, and you could also argue that PTA is a little bit better as well if you're facing more shorter ranged ADCs that you can actually bully in lane, like Vayne, you can bully very easily. Sivir, you can bully very easily. Jhin, sure. Kai'Sa, especially if she's not running Hail of Blades, you can bully her very easily. So when you're bullying these ADCs, you're doing like these kind of short combos with your weapons that almost all of them have an option to very easily proc PTA. For example, with blue Q, you do auto, Q, auto, that procs PTA. With red Q, you just literally use red Q, that procs PTA. You can do, I guess, auto Q Auto with green. Okay, green is probably not really ideal. But for example, your ultimate as well is also going to be 1 PTA proc. So if you're actually in a position where you can constantly auto attack these guys and heavily trade with them and be confident that you're going to come out on top of those trades regardless of what rune you're running, PTA is just going to make their HP bar go down faster, so you're going to be more of a lane bully towards them. And that's good because these are exactly the kind of matchups that Aphelios wants. So if you're facing any one of these ADCs, the shorter range ones, Zarya I wouldn't say is actually that good a matchup for Aphelios at high elo, but in low elo, where the Zarya is a noob, she pretty much falls into this camp. So if you're facing any one of these, you can just run PTA. That will also make you more of a lane bully. So that pretty much covers when to run PTA. Aside from that, there's also the option to run Conqueror. You can see its win rate is actually not amazing here. I'm not even 100% sure if there really is a reason to run Conqueror. But if there was a reason to run Conqueror, that would be when you're facing basically tanks in lane. Even tanks like late game, you can run it as a scaling rune if you want to. But the main scenario where I would run it is if at least in lane, the enemy bot lane is going to be very tanky. So the most common example of when I run Conqueror is if I'm facing Fasting Sun with Tahm Kench, right? Tahm Kench is incredibly tanky in lane, and so you're going to benefit a lot from Conqueror, which gives you a lot of sustained damage. Now here's a caveat. You might think Conqueror does the most sustained damage. It doesn't actually, at least not single target. PTA does the most single target sustained damage of any rune in almost all scenarios. So why would you therefore want to run Conqueror? Theoretically, maybe. Well, that could be PTA gives the most sustained single target damage, but if you say proc your PTA on Tahm Kench because he's engaging, and then he starts walking away, but Senna is still wailing away at you, if you've proc PTA on the Tahm Kench, that is wasted. You have no benefit onto Senna anymore. But if you stack Conqueror on Tahm Kench, and then he walks away, and you just have a way to focus Senna for whatever reason, you are benefited from having hidden Tahm Kench by gaining Conqueror stacks, as opposed with PTA, where you wasted your damage by hitting the Tahm Kench. So if you're participating in longer fights in general, whether that's because one target is super tanky and you're just focusing that target to death, or if you're just getting a chance to hit one target a lot and they don't die, but you still have the chance to maybe focus somebody else later, then you're going to benefit a lot from having Conqueror stacks. So an example as well, by the way, of when I ran Conqueror recently was when I was playing Aphelios Soraka into Lucian Swain. So this is a good Conqueror game for 2 different reasons. One, Soraka is keeping me alive very long, so the fights are going to be long just for the fact that I'm staying alive long. And then there's also the fact that Swain is not actually a tank, but he is pretty damn tanky. So these were very long fights. I had a lot of time to stack Conqueror. Would I kill Swain as fast with Conqueror as I would have with PTA? No, but there's obviously a lot of chances or a lot of situations where I should switch focus onto Lucian. And that's where the benefit of Conqueror comes in. Aside from that, this was not actually a great Conqueror game when you look at the rest of their comp, but if they had something like an Ornn, for example, then that's when Conqueror would really shine in this game. It wasn't an amazing game, by the way, but I think we did okay in lane. It was just, I really hate the Swain matchup in general. I think the Conqueror was decent there, though. Anyway, I hope that covered all of your questions about when to run PTA or Fleet or Conqueror. Basically, Fleet, you can never really go wrong with it. Conqueror, I don't know if there's really use for it, but maybe you could do it in those really long fights. And PTA is just your tool for following up and engage support. Or maybe you can use it if you want to really bully a short range ADC. But honestly, you could just run you could run Fleet every single game. You don't really go wrong with that. It's just that in some games, PTA might slightly outperform it. So hope you guys found this helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Make sure to check out my Aphelios guide, the Book of Aphelios. The link will be in the description. It covers stuff like this and so much more to bring you from an Aphelios noob to an Aphelios master. So honestly, it's incredibly comprehensive. You'll find it incredibly helpful if you've never seen it before. So make sure you check that out. And I'll see you guys in the next video.